Each looping excursion brought him closer to the black mountains that paralleled his route. Their peaks jutted up out of the snow like enormous flakes of obsidian that had been chipped to razor sharpness. If old tales were to be believed, the summits were the points of spearheads slammed up through the roof of their world by the race of angry giants whose own land lay beneath the earth's skin. After 10 days of riding, he reached the edge of the Mathalian Rim, the southern boundary of the Mean. He paused a moment to look down at the fertile woodlands 3,000 feet below, aware that he would never again breathe the high country air. He slipped the headgear from his mount and dropped it where he stood. He chose a looser rein arrangement that bore no trace of his origins. Though it was still chilly and the land dusted with frost, he unfastened his cloak and tossed it to the ground. He drew out a dagger and slit the leather band that secured his helmet. He hurled the dome into the bushes and shook out his hair. Loosed from the confines of pounded metal, it whipped out, as if in joy at the newfound freedom, long and brown. His hair was one of the features that had prompted him to take this assignment on. It bore little resemblance to the brittle straw coloration of most of the Mean race, and had always embarrassed him. After putting on a cotton shirt to disguise his breastplate, the horseman and his mount descended from the heights. They rode a switchback trail that spilled out onto a terrain of an altogether different sort, a temperate forest of hardwood trees, dotted with the small woodland settlements that made up the northern extent of the lands administered directly from Acacia, the bureaucratic seat of the Acacian government. As his mastery of the Empire's tongue was loathsome to him, he rarely spoke to anybody, except on the occasions that he had no choice. When he sold his horse to a trader at the southern edge of the woodlands, he growled into the back of his hand, mumbling and gruff. He accepted in payment coins of the realm, clothes that would not attract attention, and a sturdy pair of leather boots, as he would walk the rest of the way to the shore. Thus he was transformed again. He followed the main road to the south, a large sack slung over his shoulder. It bulged here and there with the items he would yet need. He passed the nights huddled in depressions at the edge of farms or in patches of woodland. Though the people around him believed the land to be gripped by winter, to him it was more like a Tahalian summer, warm enough that he found himself sweating. Not far from the port of Acacia, he discarded his garb once more. He peeled off his breastplate, sunk it beneath stones in a riverbed, and took up a cloak that had been sewn in the cold chambers of the Mean, hoping that it would pass for authentic. With it draped across his shoulders, he appeared to be one of the Vidaean. Though an ancient order, the Vidaean were no longer the functioning religious sect they had once been. They were scholars who studied and preserved the old lore under the ceremonial direction of the priestess of Veda. They were a close-mouthed group, disdainful of the workings of the empire. As such, it would not appear odd that he had few words for those around him. To complete his appearance, the man shaved the sides of his head and bound the long hair at the top of his skull up into one tight knot, wrapped in thin strips of leather. The skin at either side of his head was as pale and pink as pig flesh. He rubbed a tanning agent used to stain wood into it. Once completed, none but the keenest of eyes would have taken him for anything other than the scholar he pretended to be. Though he wore these various guises with composure, he was, in truth, none of the things he passed for. His name was Thasran Mean. He was born of noble blood, son of the late Heberon Mean. He was the younger brother of Hanish, the rightful chieftain of the tribes of the Mean Plateau and of Meander, head of the Punasari, the elite guard force and proud heart of his people's martial tradition. It was a lineage to be proud of, but he had set all else aside to become an assassin.